depression is a mood disorder. We've actually never done an episode fully on depression. Maybe we'll do one at some point in the future. Let us know if you want us to do that. But so it's a mood disorder, and you're right, it's not just about feeling sad. The NHS quite specifically says depression is more than simply feeling unhappy or fed up for a few days, which is true. And it's sort of characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, low mood, a lack of interest in basically anything. Like, from personal experience, depression is like this weird blanket. It's just over your mind, your perception over everything, where everything is just kind of like pushed down a bit. It's just kind of squashed down.
Depressed, yes.
Yeah, literally depressed. Mm-hmm. And, yes, there's sadness there, but also, even when you don't have the extreme feelings of sadness, there's nothing else there. There's like a numbness, but even feeling numb is feeling something. Do you know the feeling of numbness? How you're like, I feel numb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depression numb is like empty. It's like,
yeah.
Like there is nothing. Like the only way that I can represent specifically how the sort of emptiness, numbness of depression feels is by what I'm about to do now, which is silence. Like you can't. I can't describe the feeling of nothing to you.
Yeah, because in some senses it can also be like rather than having like necessarily an active sadness, it can be like a lack of a positive emotion, like a lack of hope, mm-hmm. or like a despair, mm-hmm. which is like almost it almost feels like despair almost feels like I'm not happy because there's nothing to be happy about, and why would I be happy in this world?
Yeah,
and that is often characterized by the fact that, we don't necessarily understand that our perception of the world is distorted by our mood, right? So when we think, why would I be happy in this world? It's like, well, but yes, there are problems in the world, but the world is not necessarily objectively a sad place, but it feels like a very sad place when you're depressed.
Yeah, I think it comes down to your perception, definitely. I mean, I think saying that the world isn't necessarily a sad place, I understand what you mean. I think I would say there are lots of sad things happening in the world.
I agree.
There's also lots of happy things happening in the world. And it is about where you shift your focus. But then it's a difficult one because you don't want to ignore the sad things because it's very important to be aware of them so that for the very reason that we can then sort of make them less sad.
Yes.
Now, if your response to the overwhelming sort of sadness or overwhelming sort of distressing nature of the world is to shut down, that's completely understandable. Like, it's weird that we consider depression a disorder in some cases, in the sense that people talk about climate anxiety, and I don't mean like sort of the more clinical idea of climate anxiety, if that really exists. What I mean is more the sort of pop culture-y media definition of climate anxiety, which is just someone that is reasonably anxious about climate change.
Yes.
Which is, I would say, not really maladaptive. That's a very normal and natural, and yes, that's a response that you should have. You should be anxious about climate change because it's a problem, right? Like that is an issue that is an issue that we're gonna have to deal with. And in the same sense, in some cases, with looking at how the world is, I understand the depression as a response. Like I don't think it's necessarily a response that doesn't make sense. Like, oh, this is abnormal and why are you having this? I don't think people should be depressed, not in the sense that I'm saying, oh, you shouldn't be depressed, stop being depressed. I mean, we should aim for people to not be depressed, but people being depressed when faced with the state of the world is perfectly understandable, and I don't think necessarily an indication of something being wrong with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's an interplay between the world and the person.
Yeah,
and so there are elements of depression or elements of sadness, which could very reasonably be a rational response to the world that we are in.
Yeah, so there's this idea called learned helplessness. We've spoken about it before in episodes sort of discussing depression in rats and whatnot. So the rat model of depression that we use is sort of learned helplessness, which is essentially basically you teach a rat to think that a rat or a mouse to think that nothing good is going to happen. Is the very simple basic way of putting it. And that's an understandable model when you're looking at humans, right? When, things are just bad, and obviously that's influenced by your perception, but if things are bad, it makes sense that you'd learn, like, oh, well, what's the point if things are bad? It makes sense. That doesn't mean that I'm not saying that it's a good response or that it's one that should be encouraged. I don't want people to be depressed, but I understand that people are. And to kind of give a very personal example of how mood can very much change your perception. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I was out at a restaurant at one point, a few months ago, and I was feeling great. We'd ordered a bunch of food. It was this vegan place. Hadn't eaten like good vegan food in a while, so I was out here very excited to have it. As it comes out, I get a horrible message, and my mood is completely I go from on top to like low as low can be. And I'm eating the food, and I'm talking like, I'll try and enjoy it, and I'm like, yeah, I can taste that the food is good tasting. I can't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Like I can intellectually tell that this food is well made and tastes good. There is not then that signal that goes from food tastes good, okay, now feel good. Yeah. It's just I recognize that this tastes good. It's like, oh well, yeah, I recognize that painting has good technique. I feel nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, sure, okay. And that was literally just a difference of mood. Entirely. Because I had some more of the food later when I felt fine. I was like, oh man, I really wish I could have enjoyed this at the time. And I couldn't.
It's a shame.
It's a shame, yeah.